My name's Tom. I'm 46, and I'm the lead designer at a mid-sized architecture firm in Savannah, Georgia. That might sound like a glamorous title, but mostly, it means I spend a lot of time behind a monitor, redlining junior staff sketches, juggling client calls, and trying to convince wealthy people that their second-floor balconies won't support a hot tub. It's a quiet job for someone who used to dream loud. Most mornings follow a formula I stopped questioning years ago. Alarm goes off at 6:10 sharp, set early enough to pretend I have ambition, late enough to avoid the philosophical dread of waking up at 5. I always lay in bed for another 3 minutes, staring at the stucco ceiling I still haven't fixed. Then it's up, compression socks on, and a reluctant jog through Forsyth Park. The fountain's nice, and the oaks are even better, but I mainly run to remind my knees who's boss. By 7:10 I'm back home, dripping sweat and feeling every bit of my age. The toast I make is always a little burnt. Our toaster has 2 settings, indifferent and vengeful. I usually eat it over the sink while glancing at the headlines on my phone, trying to digest both at the same time. That day, though, the usual rhythm had an extra edge. Hannah was already in the kitchen when I got in, dressed and polished like a woman heading into battle. She wore this navy pantsuit I hadn't seen before, sharp cut, with shoulder pads that made her look taller. Her hair was pinned up tighter than usual, and there was a subtle shimmer in her makeup, the kind she usually reserved for company events or photo shoots. On the island counter beside her, she had laid out 2 phones, one hers, one from work. She kept flipping between them like someone juggling secrets. "Investor dinner tonight," she said, eyes never leaving the screen. "I'll be home late." No kiss. No, how was the run? Just a glance in my general direction, like I was someone passing through the frame. I stood there holding my mug of lukewarm coffee, wondering if it was just me or if the room felt colder. "Should I save you a plate?" I asked, not because I expected her to say yes, but because it used to be a thing we did. Even if she got home at 10, she'd nuke something, and we'd sit on the couch eating leftovers and half watching whatever Netflix show we'd already seen twice. She didn't answer right away, just kept typing. Then she looked up briefly. "No need. Don't wait up." That was it. 5 words. Flat, deliberate, said with the warmth of an elevator voice prompt. I watched her gather her laptop bag and slide her heels on, then pause by the mirror in the hallway to adjust her necklace. In the reflection, I caught a glimpse of her face. No smile, no smirk. Just blank. She looked like a stranger trying on my wife's skin. Something about the whole exchange left a weird aftertaste in my mouth. Not jealousy, not suspicion, just this creeping sense that something had shifted. Like walking into your house and realizing all the picture frames are tilted just a little. But I didn't push it. That's the thing you learn after 20 years together. You stop asking questions when the answers might hurt. You start labeling weirdness as stress, or deadlines, or hormones. You become a curator of plausible deniability. By 7:45, I was in my car, listening to the same old podcast about mid-century design and watching the world roll past in that quiet Savannah way. Live oaks leaning like old men, pastel-painted homes with porches no one ever seems to sit on anymore. It's a charming town if you don't look too close. The kind of place where history clings to everything, but no one wants to talk about the cracks underneath. When I got to the office, my assistant, Kara, was already there, watering the snake plant she insists is good for air quality. She gave me her usual cheerful nod, then asked if I had a moment to review the Oak Grove remodel bid before the client's call at 10. I nodded, trying to push thoughts of Hannah into the mental drawer where I usually keep plumbing issues and birthday reminders. But they didn't stay put. The thing is, this wasn't the first time she'd been distant. It had been building for months, little moments that, on their own, were easy to brush off. A missed dinner here, a canceled trip there. But strung together, they formed a shape. A shape I didn't want to name yet. She used to be excited about things. Little things. A new cafe opening, a weekend drive to Tybee Island, even just flipping through Zillow listings and imagining our next move. Lately, she'd stopped sharing those thoughts. I'd find her staring at her phone with this far-off look. Half panic, half calculation. Even Buckley, our golden retriever, had picked up on it. He used to follow her from room to room like a toddler with a favorite toy. Now he barely stirred when she walked in. I joked about it once. Said he was losing his charm. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Just one of those polite expressions people wear in elevators. Work helped as it always did. I buried myself in the Oak Grove files, revised a site plan, answered 17 emails I'd been dodging since Friday. The office buzzed around me, full of conversations I wasn't part of. People asked questions I answered. I was productive, present, and yet in the back of my mind I kept hearing those words, don't wait up. By the time noon rolled around, I stepped out for lunch. There's a tiny sandwich shop on Broughton that does AK*lure turkey club, crispy bacon, not too much mayo. I sat at the window counter watching tourists pass with their sun hats and paper maps. The city felt alive and different. That's the thing about places, they move on whether you're okay or not. At 3 o'clock, I had a client meeting with a couple from Charlotte who wanted to build a modern farmhouse with solar panels and reclaimed barn wood that looked authentically old but also new. They had strong opinions about shiplap. I nodded a lot, took notes I wouldn't use, and smiled through the contradictions. But even in the middle of it, my mind drifted. Back to that morning. Back to the flatness in Hannah's voice. Back to the click of her heels as she walked out without turning around. I got home around 6:30. The sun was just starting to cast long golden streaks across the living room floor. Buckley met me at the door, tail wagging, eyes expectant. I scratched his ears, gave him a treat, and looked around. The house was still. Too still. Hannah's laptop wasn't on the kitchen island. Her shoes weren't by the door. The scent of her perfume, usually faint and comforting, was missing. I opened the fridge, stared at the leftovers I'd pretended we might share, and closed it again. I poured myself a whiskey. Sat on the porch. Watched the sky change. Pretended everything was normal. But deep down I knew. Something had started that morning. A crack in the rhythm. A space between us I hadn't noticed until it was too wide to step across. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't sure if we were just having a bad week or if the foundation had already started to crumble. The rest of that week blurred into a dull loop. Work, dinner alone, Buckley curled at my feet while the TV played to no one in particular. Hannah came and went like a guest with a key. She was polite, functional, almost too careful. No fights. No warmth either. Just quiet logistics, what time she'd be home, reminders about a grocery delivery, the occasional text about the water bill. It wasn't what she said that got to me. It was everything in between. Like how she no longer said goodnight. Or how she changed her phone passcode after 3 years of it being the date we met. I didn't try to get into her phone, I'm not that guy. But it was muscle memory for me to check the weather on it while mine charged. One day, I went to swipe up and hit the code only to see it rejected. I didn't say anything at the time. Just smiled and handed it back when she reached for it a little too fast. Then there were the little cosmetic changes. A new moisturizer she kept in her purse. Perfume that smelled like something I remembered vaguely from a hotel lobby in Miami, too luxurious for a weekday, too heavy for someone who used to wear citrus and vanilla. One evening I found a receipt from a spa tucked under her sunglasses in the drawer. A full body treatment. It stood out because she hadn't mentioned it, and she's usually the kind who turns even a new hair product into a 5-minute speech. She had also started watching shows I didn't recognize. The Netflix account, once a mess of shared shows and half-watched documentaries, suddenly had its own private user. Named simply H, I didn't ask, but I saw the recommendations. Romantic dramas. Foreign thrillers. One had the tagline, secrets always surface. The weirdest part? Buckley stopped following her around. That dog used to sleep by the bathroom door when she showered. Now he wouldn't even look at her when she came in. Animals know things. I don't care what anyone says. They always know. Then came Thursday night. The night I realized I wasn't imagining it. I got home late. We'd had a budget crisis at work and my day had been a mess of phone calls and client apologies. I wasn't in the mood for anything except leftovers and silence. But as I walked into the house, something caught my eye, her shoes. Patent leather, pointed, with a stiletto heel I hadn't seen in years. Not since my sister's wedding, actually. They were sitting by the front door like punctuation. And her coat, her winter coat, the one she never wears unless it dips below 50, was tossed over the back of a dining chair. Underneath it? A dress. Not just any dress. Something silky, dark, and open-backed. I ran my fingers over it. It was cool to the touch. Something expensive. She had left it out like it was laundry, but I knew better. Hannah treats her clothes like artifacts. This wasn't forgotten. This was carelessness. Or indifference. Nice night. I asked when she came downstairs in sweatpants, her hair damp from a shower. She paused. Just for a beat? Not long enough to prove anything, but just enough to feel it. Yeah, she said. Just dinner and drinks. The usual. With who? She blinked at me. My team. Madison and the others. I nodded, pretending to believe her. She didn't ask how my day was. The next morning, I woke up to find her standing at the front door, dressed in a pale gray turtleneck and pressed trousers. She looked like a catalog photo. But she wasn't rushing like usual. She was just standing there. Silent. Her hand hovered near the doorknob like she wasn't sure if she should leave. Her eyes flicked to mine when she noticed I was awake on the couch. I hadn't made it to bed. I told myself I'd just rest my eyes, but I think I knew I wouldn't be sleeping much lately. Have a good day, I said. She nodded slowly, then opened the door without a word and walked out. It was like watching a stranger exit my life in slow motion. After that, everything became distorted. Like I was watching my own marriage through glass. I started noticing things I wouldn't have noticed before, or maybe I had and just didn't want to believe them. She started putting her phone face down even when it buzzed. She used to be clumsy with it, dropping it into couch cushions or leaving it charging in the hallway. Now it was always in her pocket or bag. Always locked. Always guarded. One night, I came home and found her sitting on the porch. Not drinking wine. Not scrolling. Just sitting. Like she was waiting for something that never showed up. When I asked if she was okay, she smiled. But it was the small, defeated thing. The kind of smile people give when they've already checked out but are too polite to say it out loud. The password change wasn't the only shift. She started changing other things too, her bank login, her laptop login, even her streaming accounts. At first, I chalked it up to tech paranoia. But she hadn't even told me about the changes. I found out the hard way when I tried to log into our shared budgeting app to track some monthly expenses, and it kicked me out. The recovery email had been changed to an address I didn't recognize. She claimed it was for work. They want us using unique passwords, she said one night, stirring tea she wouldn't drink. Just to keep things separate. From who? I asked, half joking. She didn't answer. It was around then that I started waking up in the middle of the night, heart pounding for no reason. I'd lie in bed listening to the hum of the ceiling fan, trying to remember when exactly things had shifted from strange to wrong. She never said the word divorce. Never mentioned being unhappy. But her body said it for her. The way she leaned away when I kissed her cheek. The way she flinched when I reached for her laptop on the couch and she yanked it away like it was smoldering. The woman who used to send me texts just to tell me she missed me now went hours, sometimes whole days, without saying anything at all. I'd get more attention from Buckley scratching his bowl than I did from her. And still, I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed something real. Tangible. I wasn't about to break a 20-year bond over instinct. But the space between us was growing. Filling with silence, secrets, and the faint scent of a perfume I didn't buy. Then came Friday. The beginning of the unraveling. She said she had to go to Atlanta. A forum, she told me, for emerging marketers and brand strategists. There was a flyer on the kitchen table, printed, neatly folded, very official looking. But there were no notes on it. No markings. No agenda. Just a date and a logo. I'll be back Sunday, she said, already pulling her suitcase down the stairs. It's an overnight. Just one night. I nodded. Where's it being held? I asked casually. She blinked, then said, at the Renaissance downtown. She was lying. I didn't know how I knew. I just did. Maybe it was the way she kept her eyes on her phone the whole time. Maybe it was how she didn't ask me what I'd do while she was gone. She always used to ask. After she left, I sat at the kitchen table for an hour, staring at the untouched coffee she'd poured before leaving. Buckley laid at my feet, whimpering quietly. And that was the moment I knew I couldn't pretend anymore. Whatever was happening, it was bigger than me. Bigger than a rough patch or a cold shoulder. It wasn't just about emotional distance. There was someone else in the picture. And I needed to find out who. I didn't sleep that night. After Hannah left for Atlanta or wherever she was really going, I sat on the edge of her bed, phone in hand, trying to talk myself out of doing something I'd never done in 20 years, follow her. It felt dirty. Desperate. Like the kind of thing a jealous high school boyfriend would do. But this wasn't about insecurity. It was about clarity. Because when you're standing at the edge of something crumbling, sometimes you need to see the fall for yourself before you can believe it's real. So I took a personal day from work. Told Kara I had a migraine and wouldn't be in. She offered to reschedule my client call. I told her not to bother. By 8 a.m. I was on I-16 West, heading toward Atlanta with nothing but coffee, bad directions, and the worst feeling I've ever carried in my gut. I didn't have a plan, not really. Just instincts. And suspicion. Enough of both to keep me moving. I didn't text Hannah. Didn't call. I just watched the GPS dot that showed where her phone was, a feature we'd once enabled during a trip to Charleston and which she clearly forgot was still active on my iPad. That blue dot was the only honest thing in my life that morning. But she didn't head downtown to the Renaissance. She didn't even stay in Atlanta. Her route curved north toward Lake Lanier. A few miles out from Gainesville, she turned down a quiet road lined with cabins and pine. No signage. No billboards. Just woods and silence. The kind of place where people go to disappear. Or to be alone with someone they're not supposed to be with. I parked a few lots away from where she stopped, one of those rented private cottages people book for getaways. It looked new, modern, too sleek for the natural setting. I waited across the road, hidden by trees, engine off, eyes locked on the gravel path. Then I saw him. Tall. Mid-50s. Thick gray at the temples. Black leather jacket over a collared shirt that tried too hard. He stepped out of the cabin carrying a white box like he was hosting brunch or bringing in pastries. Casual. Comfortable. And then I saw her. Hannah. She pulled up in our SUV, stepped out like she'd done it 100 times and walked to him without hesitation. No nerves. No guilt. No checking over her shoulder. Just ease. Like she belonged there. He smiled. She laughed. Then they kissed. Not on the cheek. Not a friendly hug. It was real. Slow. Familiar. And I swear, right in that moment, my heart stopped. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't even flinch. I just sat there watching the moment my marriage ended. Something in me collapsed quietly. Like a bridge finally giving in to the weight it was never built to carry. I reached into the glove box and pulled out my phone. Snapped a photo through the windshield. Not for revenge. Not even for evidence. Just so I could stop pretending. So I could look at that image later and remind myself this actually happened. You're not crazy. You saw it. They disappeared inside a minute later. The door shut gently. The trees swayed. A bird called in the distance like it was mocking me. The world didn't stop. Just me. I sat in that car for what felt like hours. Buckley's leash was in the back seat, left over from our last trip to the park. I stared at it, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing tethering me to the ground. The rational part of me tried to make excuses. Maybe it's not what it looks like. Maybe she's consulting for him. Maybe it's a cousin. But that part of me had died somewhere back on the highway. After a while, I turned the engine on and drove away. I didn't know what I was feeling. Rage? No. Grief? Not quite. It was something colder. Heavier. The feeling of a door closing behind you. A door you never wanted to open in the first place. Back home, everything looked the same. Same porch, same curtains, same dog asleep on the rug. The photos on the wall still smiled like nothing had changed. But I was different now. I was a man who had seen something he could never unsee. I made coffee I didn't drink. Took a shower I didn't feel. Then I went to the desk in my office and opened our financial accounts. That's when things got worse. Not dramatic, not explosive. Just deeper. Little withdrawals. Small, regular amounts pulled from our joint mutual fund. Not enough to alarm the bank, but enough to matter. I followed the trail. One recurring payment, Benswick Creative LLC. A marketing consultancy I'd never heard of. At first, I assumed it was for her job, something she mentioned once and I forgot. But then I checked the paperwork. It was under my name. My digital signature. Filed with the state, tax ID linked to my social security number. Only I never signed anything. And the kicker? The second stakeholder on the LLC was listed as Edward Sloan, the man from the cabin. It felt like someone had swapped out my life when I wasn't looking. Like I'd stepped into a version of reality where nothing made sense and I didn't even recognize my own reflection. I sat back in the chair, heart pounding. Not just from betrayal, but from the audacity of it. The level of deception. This wasn't just about S**X or loneliness or even emotional abandonment. This was coordinated. Strategic. Signed. Sealed. Hidden in plain sight. She hadn't just lied to me. She'd used me. Used my name. Used my trust. And suddenly this wasn't just a failing marriage. It was a betrayal of everything we ever stood for. I didn't sleep that night either. I couldn't. My mind was spinning too fast to rest. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them again, Hannah and Edward. The way they moved, the way they didn't flinch. The kiss. The familiarity. But the worst part wasn't the image. It was the implications. This wasn't some impulsive affair that exploded out of boredom or a bad fight. This was orchestrated. Careful. Intentional. It had roots. And I've been watering it without even knowing. I sat at my desk well into the early hours, poring over bank statements, joint accounts, archived emails. It was all there. Neatly disguised, but consistent. Weekly withdrawals, just low enough to dodge attention. Transfers from our savings to this Benswick Creative LLC. I Googled the company. Generic branding. A 2-page website with buzzwords like market acceleration and branding alignment. No team bios. No real clients listed. It looked fake. But it wasn't. Because when I downloaded the incorporation documents, my name was there, bold and centered. Thomas J. Weller, co-founder. Digital signature. Matching email. Matching SSN. And the second name, Edward Sloan. I stared at it, breathing in sharp bursts. I felt sick. My pulse thudded in my throat. How? When? I remembered a night 2 months ago Hannah had asked me to e-sign a bunch of refinance forms for the car. She'd been on her laptop in bed, too tired to go over the details. It's the standard stuff, she'd said, handing me her iPad. Just sign at the bottom. And I did. Like an idiot. I didn't check. Didn't scroll. Why would I? We'd done this before. Bills. Loans. Insurance paperwork. It had become routine. But she hadn't sent me a loan application. She'd sent me incorporation documents. She'd used me to co-sign a fake business with the man she was cheating on me with. The betrayal wasn't just personal now. It was legal. Financial. Existential. My own name was tangled in her lie. My identity, my credit, my security, all of it compromised for something I never even agreed to. And I couldn't even figure out why. Was it money? Was she setting up a new life? Was she planning to drain our assets and disappear? Or worse, was she preparing to leave me and make it look like I was the one who had been careless? I printed everything. Pages and pages. Statements. Contracts. The email receipts from DocuSign. The payments to the LLC. I took *TS. Labeled them. Highlighted her login IPs. The next morning, I drove to my lawyer's office without an appointment. Karen Nichols had helped us close on our house 5 years ago. She remembered me. Asked how Hannah was. I almost laughed. Instead, I handed her the stack of papers and said, I need you to look at this. Now. She read through everything without saying a word. Her eyes narrowed. Her mouth set into a hard line. After 20 minutes, she looked up and asked, Do you want to file for divorce? Yes, I said. But I need more than that. She leaned forward. Tom, what she did isn't just infidelity. She committed fraud. If she forged your signature and used your name to open a business with someone else, we're talking about a criminal offense. I nodded slowly. I felt numb. Like I was floating above my own life, watching it burn from a safe distance. But here's the tricky part, Karen continued. The signature technically came from your email and device. She could claim you consented. It's hard to prove otherwise unless we have messages, intent, or evidence of deception. You mean like catching her in a cabin with the other guy? I said, sliding my phone across the table. She studied the photos. Okay, she said, that'll help. Over the next 2 days, I built the case of my life. My marriage was now a file folder, neatly tabbed, infidelity. Fraud. Paper trail. Photos. Text logs. Everything labeled, cataloged, undeniable. I didn't confront Hannah. Not yet. She came home Sunday evening, suitcase in tow, calm as ever. I watched her from the kitchen as she poured herself a glass of water and checked the thermostat like it was any other day. I didn't say anything. She didn't say anything. We moved around each other like ghosts in our own house. And then, as if scripted, she looked up and said, Everything okay? That was it. I walked to the desk, picked up the manila folder, and handed it to her. What's this? She asked, flipping it open. She didn't get far. She stopped at the first page. Then the second. Her fingers trembled. She flipped faster, her face draining of color. She looked up at me. I didn't speak. She sat down. For the first time in weeks, she looked genuinely human. Not cold. Not polished. Not distant. Just cracked open. She began, then stopped. She turned the page. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. You forged my signature, I said. You used my name to start a fake company with your affair partner. She flinched. It wasn't fake. It was supposed to be a business. With him. Her eyes filled with tears. It started as a strategy thing. Edward had clients and I had marketing experience. We thought it could be something. But you couldn't even be honest about it. I didn't know how. You didn't know how, I said. You just didn't care. She didn't respond. Just stared down at the pages. At her own deception in ink and timestamps. I didn't yell. I didn't ask for an apology. Because the truth was I didn't need one. She hadn't just cheated on me. She'd rewritten me out of my own life. And no apology would fix that. She sat there with the folder open in her lap like it was a verdict, and maybe it was. The pages didn't scream. They didn't accuse. But they didn't need to. They were cold. Objective. Numbers and dates and screen grabs. The kind of evidence that doesn't flinch when you look it in the eye. I leaned against the wall with my arms crossed, watching her absorb it all. Not because I wanted to punish her, but because I didn't want to interrupt whatever reality was finally landing inside her. For once, the silence wasn't between us. It was in her. You went through everything? She asked after a long stretch of stillness. I had to, I said. You didn't leave me much choice. Her eyes were red, but she wasn't crying. She was beyond that. You could see it in the way she blinked slow, like every moment was heavier than the one before. I didn't want to hurt you, she said. I let out a small breath. Not a laugh, just her I couldn't hold in anymore. That line, that script. I didn't want to hurt you. Like that was ever enough to cancel out what came after. You had options, Hannah, I said. You could have told me things weren't working. You could have asked for space. You could have said anything. Instead, you made me a silent partner in your affair. You used my name to legitimize a lie. She looked down. I know. No, I said. I don't think you do. She went quiet again. Buckley padded into the room and sat by me, eyes flicking between us. He didn't go to her. I was scared, she said eventually. Of what? Of losing what we had. I shook my head. You didn't lose it, Hannah. You gave it away. I walked to the kitchen and poured a glass of water, more to have something to do than out of thirst. My hands were steady now. I'd already shaken. Already shouted, alone in the car, in my head, in dreams. Now I just felt done. When I came back, she was holding one of the photos, the one of her and Edward outside the cottage, mid-embrace. Is this what you want? I asked. Him? That life? She didn't answer right away. I don't know, she said finally, and that hurt more than if she just said yes. Because that meant she hadn't even decided. Hadn't even weighed what I was worth before she jumped. You built this with him, I said, gesturing to the folder. So at some point, you knew what you were doing. I wasn't thinking long-term, she admitted. It started as an idea. We had chemistry professionally, I mean. And then. She trailed off. Like maybe she thought if she didn't finish the sentence, it wouldn't count. Don't insult me, I said, my voice flat. You don't start a company with someone you kiss in a driveway unless you've already crossed every line worth crossing. She didn't argue. Didn't cry. Didn't plead. She just sat there, holding the evidence like it was a newborn she didn't know how to care for. So what now? She whispered. I'm filing, I said. The words landed like a stone between us. Final. Cold. Honest. She nodded once, slowly. Her face crumpled just a little, just enough to let me know she still felt something. Maybe guilt. Maybe fear. But not enough. Not enough to undo anything. I never wanted it to end like this, she said, her voice small. No one ever does, I replied. And I meant it. I'd imagined 100 versions of how things might fall apart. A slow fade. A mutual drifting. Even a fight so big it split the house down the middle. But not this. Not paperwork and screech asterisk TS and a stranger's name next to mine on a business filing. She stood up like her legs were trying to remember how to hold her weight. Looked around the room like it didn't belong to her anymore. Should I pack a bag? She asked. I didn't answer right away. I just looked at her, really looked at her. The way her hands shook. The way she was holding herself like she didn't know what shape she was supposed to be. No, I said. You can stay until we get things in order. I'm not kicking you out. She looked relieved and ashamed at the same time. I'll take the guest room, she said. I nodded. She walked up the stairs slowly, Buckley's ears twitching at the sound. I waited until I heard the door click shut before I moved. I stood in the middle of the living room, surrounded by a quiet that no longer felt like peace. Just absence. Something missing. Something gone. The folder was still on the table, a silent monument to everything that led us here. And I realized then I wasn't angry anymore. I was just finished. Whatever this was, whatever she had with Edward, wherever it was going, it wasn't my concern anymore. She'd built something behind my back. Now it was my turn to build something without her. After a few days, when the numbness gave way to clarity, I did something I never imagined I would. I looked up Edward Sloane's wife. Caroline. I found her on Facebook. Her profile was quiet, a few photos of a garden, a golden retriever, some wine nights with friends. I typed a message, kept it simple, respectful, just facts. I almost deleted it 3 times before I hit send. An hour later, she replied. 2 hours after that, we were on the phone. Her voice was calm, like someone already living with suspicion and now hearing confirmation. When I mentioned Hannah's name, she paused for a long time. It all makes sense now, she finally said. We talked for nearly an hour, sharing notes, connecting dots. Her tone never turned bitter, just tired. She was filing for divorce too. Somehow that call lifted something from my chest. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't alone. Someone else knew what this felt like. After that, I stopped looking for meaning in Hannah's silences. I stopped checking her movements, stopped guessing what she felt. None of it mattered anymore. There was no explanation that would make the betrayal smaller. No apology that could undo the calculation it took to build a lie that big. I found a small apartment across town. Brick building, old radiator, no dishwasher. It was perfect. Quiet. Mine. I packed my things carefully. Left behind everything that didn't feel like mine anymore. I handed Kara my vacation request. Personal leave, I told her. No questions asked. That afternoon, I walked out of the house where nothing felt honest anymore. Buckley came with me, his tail thumping gently in the passenger seat as we drove away. It was all over.